She thought she was just a waitress. Until one night, serving the city's most powerful billionaire, her world turned upside down. A photo on his phone froze her in shock, which was her mother. With trembling lips, she whispered, "Sir, that's my mum." From that moment, a storm of secrets and heartbreak began, tearing apart everything she believed about her past. The night was like any other at the luxury five-star restaurant, a place where wealthy businessmen, celebrities, and powerful politicians came to dine under the glittering chandeliers and the watchful eyes of the staff. Among the servers was Emma, a young waitress who worked long hours just to pay her rent and support her ailing mother. To the customers, she was invisible, just another girl in uniform pouring wine and carrying trays. But that night would change everything. The atmosphere shifted the moment Alexander Grant, one of the city's most famous billionaires, walked in. He was a man of immense power, known for building empires and breaking competitors with a snap of his fingers. Dressed in a sharp black suit, his presence commanded silence and respect. Emma, balancing a tray of glasses, noticed how everyone turned their heads when he entered. For her, he was just another rich client, one who left big tips but never once looked at the servers. She didn't know her life was about to collide with his in the most unexpected way. She was asked to serve him directly that evening. Nervous but professional, she walked to his table. Alexander was scrolling through his phone, clearly distracted, his face tightening as if he was staring at something that stirred old memories. Emma placed the wine glass in front of him and politely asked if he'd like to order. But then her eyes fell on his phone screen. Her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't stop staring. On the phone was a photograph, old and slightly faded, of a woman standing by the sea, smiling as the wind blew her hair. Emma's hands began to shake. That smile, those eyes, was unmistakable. It was her mother. For a few seconds her entire body froze, her mind screaming that this couldn't be real. Her lips trembled, and before she could stop herself, the words slipped out. "Sir, that photo, that's my mum." The billionaire's hand jerked, almost dropping his phone. His piercing blue eyes snapped toward her, filled with shock, disbelief, and something darker fear. The entire restaurant seemed to go silent, as if the chandeliers themselves were listening. "What did you just say?" Alexander's voice was low, dangerous, but it trembled slightly. Emma's cheeks burned, her throat dry, but she forced herself to repeat it. "That's my mother in your photo. Where did you get that picture?" For a moment, Alexander could not speak. His chest rose and fell heavily, and then he locked his phone, sliding it face down on the table. "What's your mother's name?" he demanded. Emma blinked rapidly, confused and afraid. "Her name is Catherine Miller." At the sound of the name, Alexander leaned back in his chair, running a hand across his face as though he had just been struck. He muttered something under his breath that Emma couldn't hear. Then, suddenly, his cold billionaire mask returned, and he fixed his gaze on her. "We need to talk," he said, in a voice that brooked no refusal. "Not here. After your shift ends." Emma's heart pounded so loudly she could barely breathe. A dozen questions flooded her mind. Why did a billionaire have a photo of her mother? How did he even know her? And why was he looking at her as though she wasn't just a waitress, but a ghost from his past? She stumbled back, muttering an apology, and quickly left his table, but she could still feel his eyes burning into her back. For the rest of her shift, Emma was distracted, her mind spinning with possibilities. Her mother had always been secretive about her younger years. Whenever Emma asked about her father or her past, Catherine would change the subject or give vague answers. Emma had grown up believing her father was a nameless man who had abandoned them, and she never pressed further out of respect for her mother's pain. But now, seeing her mother's picture on the phone of one of the most powerful men in the country, everything felt like a lie. Across the room, Alexander Grant barely touched his food. His fingers tapped the table, his jaw clenched tight. The resemblance was undeniable. This girl standing before him had her mother's eyes, her mother's face, her mother's nervous smile. Memories he had buried long ago clawed their way back to the surface. Catherine, the woman he had once loved, the woman he had lost under circumstances that still haunted him, was alive in this girl. No, not alive, passed down, reborn. He had thought Catherine disappeared forever, gone without explanation. And yet here was her daughter, standing before him as a waitress. His chest tightened with guilt, anger, and a fear he couldn't quite explain. He wasn't ready for this. Not tonight, not after all these years. But fate had delivered the truth to his table. When the restaurant finally emptied and the lights dimmed, Emma found herself trembling in the locker room, clutching her mother's old locket around her neck. She couldn't shake Alexander's piercing stare, the way he demanded to know her mother's name, as if that single word had shattered his world. She thought she was just a waitress serving a wealthy man, but tonight proved she was wrong. There was a connection, an invisible chain linking her simple life to his empire, his secrets, and maybe even his sins. And though Emma didn't yet know it, the truth waiting for her would break her heart in ways she could never imagine. When Emma left the restaurant that night, she could still feel the billionaire's eyes following her every step. The city lights shimmered outside, cars honking in the distance. But her mind was trapped inside one haunting image, the photograph on his phone. Her mother's face, smiling on a beach she had never visited, preserved in the private gallery of a man she had never met. Questions swirled like a storm. How did he know her? Why did he look at her like that? Why did he demand to meet her after her shift? She hurried home to her small apartment, where her mother slept on a worn sofa, too frail to notice Emma's trembling hands. She wanted to wake her, to demand answers, but fear held her back. Something deep in her heart whispered that her mother might not want the truth revealed. On the other side of the city, in a penthouse high above the skyline, Alexander Grant poured himself a glass of whiskey. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out over the glittering metropolis he controlled. But his thoughts were far away, in another time. Catherine, the name alone could unearth memories he had buried. Under layers of success and ambition, he remembered her laughter, the way she challenged him when no one else dared, the love they shared in secret, away from the judgment of his powerful family. And then he remembered the pain the night she vanished, the unanswered questions, the lies that destroyed everything. He had searched for her once, years ago, but doors were slammed, trails went cold, and eventually he gave up. Until now, until a waitress with her face appeared at his table. He slammed the glass on the counter, spilling amber liquid across polished marble. He couldn't let this go. He summoned his head of security, a loyal ex-military man named Marcus. "I want everything on that waitress," Alexander commanded. "Name, address, family background, tonight." Marcus hesitated. "Sir, that might cross some lines." Alexander cut him off. "She claimed Catherine was her mother. Do you understand what that means? If there's even a chance." His voice broke for a moment, but he steadied it. "Find the truth." By dawn, Marcus returned with a file thick with documents, photos, and addresses. Alexander sat at his oak desk, flipping through each page with growing intensity. Emma Miller, 22 years old, works at the Levaret restaurant, lives with her mother, Catherine Miller, in a modest apartment downtown. No record of a father listed. School records, hospital files, employment details, it was all there. But what struck him hardest was a copy of Catherine's most recent hospital admission form. One word scrawled across the box, labeled next of kin, sent chills down his spine. Emma. Alexander leaned back, heart pounding. Catherine had lived in the shadows all these years, raising a daughter alone. A daughter who now stood before him, carrying her mother's eyes. And he, Alexander Grant, had been blind to it. All meanwhile, Emma noticed changes in her daily life. At the restaurant, she felt eyes on her black-suited men sitting at corner tables, pretending to eat but watching her closely. When she walked home, a dark car always seemed to trail a block behind. Fear gnawed at her. One evening, unable to bear it, she confronted one of them. "Why are you following me?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The man gave no answer, only handing her a sealed envelope before disappearing into the night. Emma opened it under a street lamp. Inside was a single card with gold-embossed letters. "Alexander Grant requests your presence. Midnight, Grant Tower." Her hands trembled. The tower was a place of myths, a skyscraper fortress where the billionaire conducted his empire, guarded like a palace. What could he possibly want with her? She thought about ignoring it, but a force stronger than fear pushed her forward: curiosity, and the desperate need for answers about her mother. At midnight, she stood at the base of Grant Tower, its glass walls glowing like ice under the moonlight. Guards escorted her inside, through endless corridors lined with art worth more than her entire life's earnings. At the top floor, double doors opened to reveal Alexander sitting behind a desk that seemed to swallow the room. He rose when she entered, his gaze sharp, his presence suffocating. "Emma," he said slowly, as if tasting the name, "thank you for coming." She crossed her arms, trying to hide her fear. "Why do you have my mother's photo? What are you not telling me?" Alexander studied her in silence, his face unreadable. Then he gestured to a chair. "Sit. There are things you don't know, things Catherine never told you, and now you deserve the truth." Emma hesitated, every nerve screaming at her to run, but she sat. The billionaire's words poured into the room like thunder. "Your mother wasn't just anyone. She was once the love of my life, and if what I suspect is true," his eyes burned into hers, "you are the living proof of everything I lost." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. The room tilted, the world crashing in. Could it be true? Was this man the untouchable billionaire everyone feared, connected to her life in ways she could never have imagined? Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Are you saying you're my father?" Alexander didn't answer. He simply slid a folder across the desk, thick with evidence, hospital records, and photographs. "Read," he commanded. Emma's trembling hands opened it, and the truth inside threatened to break her heart before she even turned the first page. Emma's fingers trembled as she flipped through the folder. Each page felt heavier than the last, as though the weight of years of secrets pressed down on her chest. There were hospital records, photos, and old letters that looked like they had been written decades ago. Her mother's name appeared over and over against Catherine Miller, but in some documents it wasn't Miller at all. Emma's eyes widened when she saw it. Catherine Harrington. She looked up at Alexander in shock. Why does it say Harrington? That's not her name. His expression darkened. It was, before she disappeared from my life. Emma shook, her head, her thoughts unraveling. You're lying. My mother never said anything about you. She never mentioned Harrington, never mentioned Grant, never mentioned any of this. Alexander moved closer, his presence overwhelming, because she was protecting you, and perhaps protecting herself. His voice lowered, filled with regret. Catherine and I were in love once, when we were young, but my family, powerful, ruthless, refused to accept her. They saw her as beneath us, a woman from a modest background who threatened the empire's image. They forced me to choose, the company or her. Emma's heart twisted. She wanted to reject his words, to call him a liar, but the sincerity in his voice unnerved her. And you chose them, she accused, bitterness rising. Alexander flinched. I was weak. I let them tear us apart. And when she left, I thought it was forever. I never knew she carried a secret with her. Emma's breathing grew shallow. Me, she whispered. The secret was me. Silence engulfed the room. Alexander's eyes softened with something between guilt and longing. The moment you said that photo was your mother, I knew. I saw Catherine's eyes in yours, her fire, her stubbornness. Emma's mind flashed back to nights when she begged her mother for stories about her father. Catherine always avoided the subject, her eyes clouding with pain. Emma had assumed it was abandonment, that her father had simply walked away. But now, hearing Alexander's version, the story shifted into something much darker, forbidden love, destroyed by greed and power. Emma felt anger boil inside her. You're saying all this as if it excuses you? Do you know what it was like growing up without a father, watching my mother work herself sick to raise me? Do you know how many birthdays I asked her why I didn't have someone like everyone else, and she just cried instead of answering? Alexander's jaw tightened, but he didn't defend himself. I failed her, and I failed you. But now fate has brought you back into my life, and I won't waste this chance. His words terrified her, brought me back. I'm not yours. You don't get to claim me after 2 decades. She slammed the folder shut, her eyes burning with tears. But the evidence inside haunted her letters Catherine had written but never sent. Photos of her young mother standing beside Alexander at Gallus, smiling as though she belonged to that glittering world. And then there was the most damning page, a paternity test order, never completed, dated just months before Emma's birth. Emma stumbled to her feet, backing away. This can't be real. My mum wouldn't hide this from me. She wouldn't. Alexander's expression softened with something almost paternal. She did it to protect you, to keep you away from my world, from the corruption, from my family's cruelty. And maybe she was right. But now that I know, I cannot ignore it. His words wrapped around her like chains. Emma's chest felt tight, her breaths shallow. If this is true, she whispered, then everything I knew about my life is a lie. Alexander nodded slowly. It changes everything. But Emma wasn't ready to accept him, not after the years of pain, not after seeing her mother wither away carrying secrets alone. She turned and fled the office, her footsteps echoing in the marble halls. Outside, the city stretched endlessly, but she felt trapped. She wanted answers from the only person who could give them, her mother. She ran home, burst into the apartment, and found Catherine awake, her eyes red as though she had been waiting for this moment. "Mum," Emma cried, holding up the folder. "Why didn't you tell me? Why is his photo of you?" Why does everything point to him being? Her voice cracked. My father. Catherine froze, tears spilling down her cheeks. She whispered Emma's name like a prayer, then shook her head. I tried to keep you safe. I wanted you to have a normal life, free from that man's world, free from the pain. Emma dropped to her knees. So it's true, he is my father. Catherine sobbed, covering her face. The silence was answer enough. Emma's world shattered. She thought she was just a waitress struggling through life. But now she realized she was the hidden child of one of the world's most powerful men, the product of a forbidden love buried beneath lies. And while the truth filled her with anger and heartbreak, a deeper fear coiled inside Herbie. 'Cause if Alexander's family once destroyed her mother's life, what would they do now that they knew about her? The days after Catherine's tearful confession felt like a fog Emma couldn't escape. She went to work, she served tables, but her mind was elsewhere, buried in the folder. In her mother's broken voice, in the haunting presence of Alexander. Grant, she had dreamed of knowing her father as a little girl, but never like this. Not a man of impossible wealth and power, not a man who had abandoned her mother to satisfy his empire. The bitterness chewed at her heart with every passing hour. One evening, as the restaurant buzzed with its usual rhythm of clinking glasses and murmured conversations, a sleek black car pulled up outside. The staff whispered nervously as Alexander Grant himself walked through the door, ignoring everyone, until his eyes found Emma. Her heart stopped. We need to talk, he said, his voice low but commanding. Emma wanted to scream at him, to demand he leave her alone, but some invisible pull forced her to follow. He led her outside, into the car, and before she could protest, they were speeding through the city, neon lights blurring into streaks of color. The silence was suffocating until the car pulled up to a grand iron gate. Beyond it lay an estate that looked more like a fortress than a home Grant manor, whispered about in gossip magazines, a place ordinary people never entered. The doors opened with mechanical precision, and Emma was ushered inside. The interior was overwhelming: marble floors, chandeliers that sparkled like frozen waterfalls, walls lined with oil paintings of stern-faced men and elegant women, all bearing the unmistakable features of the Grant bloodline. Emma felt like an intruder, a stranger trespassing in a world not meant for her. Alexander's voice broke the silence. This is your heritage, he said softly. This house, this legacy, it could have been yours all along. Emma turned on him, fury burning in her eyes. Heritage, legacy. Do you think chandeliers and paintings make up for 22 years of absence? For every night my mother cried herself to sleep while you sat in this palace. Alexander stiffened, but he didn't retreat. I didn't know about you. She never told me. If she had. Emma cut him off. If she had, what? Would you have chosen me over your empire? Would you have defied your family? Or would you have done what you did to her, abandoned me for power? Her words sliced through him. He inhaled sharply, as though struck. For a moment the mask slipped, and Emma saw the guilt etched into his face. You don't understand, he whispered. My family isn't just powerful, they're dangerous. They would have destroyed her. They would have destroyed you. I thought letting her go was the only way to protect her. Emma's throat tightened. Protect her. You let her live in poverty while you built skyscrapers. You call that protection? Tears threatened to fall, but she held them back, unwilling to show weakness in front of him. Alexander motioned toward a side room. There's something I want to show you. Reluctantly, Emma followed. Inside was a private gallery, walls covered with photographs, newspaper clippings, and letters. In the center, a single portrait stopped her heart. It was Catherine, younger, radiant, wearing a dress of pale blue. Emma stepped closer, her fingers brushing the frame. It was unmistakable, her mother in her prime, standing beside Alexander, their hands secretly entwined at their sides. More photos followed. Catherine at galas, Catherine in gardens, Catherine smiling in a way Emma had never seen in real life. And then Emma saw it, one photo tucked in the corner, Catherine pregnant, standing alone, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. The date scrawled on the back matched the year of Emma's birth, her chest constricted, her knees weak. She turned on Alexander, her voice breaking. "It's true, isn't it? You are my father." His eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Yes. And I swear, if I had known, I would have fought for you." I would have. Emma raised her hand, stopping him. Don't say words you can't take back. You had your chance with her, and you chose yourself. Now you want to act like some savior in my life. I don't need saving, Mr. Grant. I needed a father. The silence stretched like a wound. Alexander stepped forward, his voice desperate. "Emma, listen to me. You are my daughter, whether you accept it or not. That makes you part of this family, this legacy. But it also puts you in danger. My family will not forgive this revelation. They will come for you. That's why I need you close, why I need to protect you now, before it's too late." Emma's heart pounded with fear and fury. She thought of her fragile mother, still lying in their small apartment, unaware of the storm building around them. She thought of the Grant portraits glaring down at her, of a family that would rather erase her existence than accept her. She took a shaky breath. "Maybe you're right. Maybe they will come for me. But I'd rather face them as who I am. Waitress, a daughter who loved her mother than as your hidden heir locked inside a gilded cage." Alexander's shoulders slumped, defeat heavy on him. Yet in his eyes burned a spark, a resolve that frightened her. "You can deny me all you want," he said quietly, "but blood cannot be erased. You are mine, Emma, and soon the world will." "No." Emma's chest tightened as the words sank in. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning of a confrontation that could destroy everything she had ever known. The revelation of her bloodline clung to Emma like a curse she could not wash away. Every step she took after leaving Grant Manor felt heavier, as though invisible chains tied her to Alexander's world. The city no longer looked the same. Every shadow felt threatening. Every car that slowed near her apartment made her heart race. Alexander's warning echoed in her head. "My family will not forgive this revelation. They will come for you." She wanted to dismiss it as manipulation, a ploy to draw her closer. But deep inside she knew there was truth in his words. The Grant family wasn't just rich, they were ruthless. And now they had a reason to erase her existence. Back home, Catherine was growing weaker, her body failing under the weight of years of struggle. Emma sat by her bedside, clutching her mother's fragile hand, her tears falling freely. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. Catherine's tired, eyes opened, filled with sorrow. "Because I knew this would happen. The moment he found out about you, he would drag you into that cruel world. I wanted to spare you from it, Emma. I wanted you to be free." Emma's voice broke. "Free. I grew up with questions that ate me alive. Do you know what it's like to look in the mirror and not know where you came from? To wonder why your mother hides tears behind closed doors. You wanted to protect me, but all you gave me were scars of silence. Catherine squeezed her hand weakly. I did what I thought was best. I couldn't fight him, Emma. I couldn't fight them, but you're stronger than I ever was. Her voice cracked with finality, and Emma's chest ached as she realized. Her mother might not have much time left. She fell asleep in the chair beside her, but the night brought no peace. In her dreams, the grand portraits loomed over her, their eyes burning with disdain, their whispers telling her she didn't belong, that she would be erased like her mother had been. Days blurred into nights. At the restaurant, customers noticed the haunted look in her eyes. She dropped plates, forgot orders, and her manager scolded her, but she barely heard. Her life had become a storm she couldn't escape. Then, one evening, another black car waited outside her building. This time, it wasn't Alexander. Two men in tailored suits approached her with cold smiles. Miss Miller, one of them said smoothly, our employers request your cooperation, for your own safety, of course. Emma's blood ran cold. These weren't bodyguards, they were enforcers. Her mother's frail figure flashed in her mind, and fear twisted into resolve. She straightened her shoulders. Tell your employers I'm not afraid of them, she said, her voice trembling but firm. The men exchanged glances, their smiles fading, but they left without a word. Emma ran upstairs, locking every door, her heart pounding in her chest. Later that night, Alexander appeared unannounced, his presence filling their small apartment like a storm. Catherine, too weak to rise, simply closed her eyes as if bracing for battle. They've made their move, Alexander said grimly. My family won't stop until you're silenced. You need protection. You need me. Emma stepped between him and her mother, fury igniting in her veins. Protection. You were the reason they're after me in the first place. You brought this curse to our door. Alexander's face twisted with guilt, but his voice was unyielding. I won't lose you the way I lost her. Not again. You are my blood, Emma, and whether you accept me or not, I will fight for you. Catherine's voice, fragile but sharp, cut through the tension. Fight. You don't fight for anyone but yourself, Alexander. You let them tear us apart. You let them destroy our happiness. And now you think you can swoop in like some savior. Leave her alone. Don't chain her to your empire the way you chained me. Alexander's mask cracked, his eyes glistening. For a moment, Emma saw not the billionaire, but a broken man haunted by his past mistakes. He turned to Emma, desperation etched into every line of his face. I can't undo the past, but I can give you a future wealth, security, power. You'll never struggle again. Emma's heart broke. She thought of the nights she and her mother had eaten soup from a single pot because there wasn't enough money. She thought of the shoes with holes she had worn in the rain. All of that could have been avoided if Alexander had chosen them. But he hadn't, and no amount of wealth now could heal the wounds of abandonment. I don't want your empire, she whispered, her voice trembling. I just wanted a father, and that's the one thing you'll never be. The words shattered. Alexander, he stepped back, his face pale, his lips parted as though she had struck him. For the first time, the great Alexander Grant looked powerless. Catherine's labored breathing filled the silence. Emma knelt beside her, clutching her. Mother's hand, tears streaming down her face. I don't care about their threats, Emma said softly. I'll face them all, but I won't lose myself to his world. I won't let his name define me. Catherine smiled weakly, pride flickering in her eyes. That's my girl, she whispered. Emma pressed her forehead to her mother's hand. her heart breaking under the weight of truth, lies, and everything in between. Behind her, Alexander stood frozen, torn between guilt and longing, knowing he had lost the only two people who had ever mattered. As dawn broke through the curtains, Emma realized her life would never return to normal. She was no longer just a waitress. She was the daughter of a billionaire, a secret the world wasn't ready to know, a truth that shattered her heart but gave her strength. And though her path ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: she would not let their legacy define her. She would define herself.